بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. This is a response to a video titled, Will Unbelievers Remain in Hellfire Forever? The View of Ibn Taymiyya, which was recently put up by Brother Paul over at Blogging Theology. So in the video, Paul reads from Jon Hoover's text, Ibn Taymiyya. We'll take a look at who Jon Hoover is, and we'll respond to the text read aloud by Paul.
In this excellent book, Ibn Taymiyya, by Professor Jon Hoover, Professor of Islamic Studies at the University of Nottingham. He's acknowledged as one of the world's experts on the thought and life of Ibn Taymiyya.
So this is directly from the University of Nottingham's website. We can see Hoover studied Arabic for several years with no mention of the institution. He has a PhD in Islamic Studies from Birmingham University and studied at a biblical seminary, which is interesting. So we can see that he studied mainly in Western institutions. I don't see how he's as well renowned when none of his education is from the Muslim world, and it doesn't seem to me that his texts are translated into the Arabic language, and the texts he's relying upon are from the Muslim world and in the Arabic language.
Jon Hoover writes, Ibn Taymiyya is totally unsympathetic to religions apart from Islam, and he is in no doubt that unbelievers will suffer punishment in hellfire in the hereafter. However, late in his life he came to the conclusion that this punishment would not last forever. Sometime during Ibn Taymiyya's last imprisonment in Damascus, his student Ibn Qayyim asked him twice about the chastisement of unbelievers in hellfire. The first time Ibn Taymiyya refused to answer. He would only say that it was a difficult question, and it appears that he did not yet know what to think. The second time Ibn Qayyim sent his teacher a book containing a statement by Umar ibn al-Khattab, a companion of the Prophet Muhammad. The statement read, Even if the people of the fire stayed in the fire like the amount of sand in Alij, they would have, despite that, a day in which they would come out. Alij was a large tract of sand on the way to Mecca. Ibn Taymiyya responded with what appears to be his last work, a short treatise entitled Refutation of Whoever Adheres to the Annihilation of Paradise and Hellfire.
Here is Shifa'ul Alil by Ibn Al-Qayyim, the student of Ibn Taymiyya. On page 514, we can see the story mentioned here. He says, I asked Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyya, and he said to me, this is a vast topic, and didn't answer with anything. And then he mentions the rest of the story. And he says that Ibn Taymiyya wrote in his famous work without mentioning the name of the book, which is very important. The issue is, Hoover claims that Ibn Taymiyya responded with a treaty titled Refutation of Whoever Adheres to the Annihilation of Paradise and Hellfire. And we can see that Ibn Al-Qayyim never mentions the title of the book. In fact, the title of the book is highly disputed, and even the manuscript itself is actually rejected by some scholars who claim that the manuscript does not belong to Ibn Taymiyya himself.
In this treatise, Ibn Taymiyya argues that it is incorrect to say that both paradise and hellfire will be eliminated or annihilated. That was the view of an eccentric theologian from the 2nd century of Islam. Instead, explains Ibn Taymiyya, the reward of paradise is everlasting, while the chastisement of unbelievers in hellfire will end.
So here's Ar-Rad ala man qala bi fana'il jannati wan nar by Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyya. And the work was done by Dr. Muhammad al-Samhari from the University of Muhammad ibn Saud, which is the same copy that Hoover is using. This is the 1995 edition. And here we see on the introduction of the book, Dr. Muhammad al-Samhari, the scholar who did the work on the book, he says, there doesn't exist, from what I know, a clear text from Ibn Taymiyya regarding this topic. Rather, he has a treatise which he wrote as an answer to the question he was asked. So he replied with opinions of scholars other than himself, and clarified the difference between paradise and hell lasting forever, and their end. He didn't comment on the opinions he mentioned with a statement of his own, which is very interesting because I don't see how Dr. Hoover totally missed the introduction of the book. And in fact, I went through the book and I found that the statement of Dr. Muhammad al-Samhari was true. There's no mention of Ibn Taymiyya's opinion regarding these matters, except that he only clarifies some positions here and there, but doesn't mention his opinion anywhere in the text. Let's take a look at some clear text from Ibn Taymiyyah himself regarding this topic. So here we have Dar'u Ta'arid al-Aqli wal-Naql. In volume 2, page 358, he mentions the opinion of Jahm ibn Safwan, the 2nd century scholar, as Hoover mentions earlier. He says that Jahm believed that paradise and hellfire will both end and their inhabitants, until only Allah remains as once He was, nothing with Him. And all of the people of Islam, all of the Muslims say, paradise and hell have no end, and both will always remain. We also have here Majmu' al-Fatawa by Ibn Taymiyah, volume 18, page 307. The Salaf of the Ummah, their Imams and the rest of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah agree that some of the creation won't expire nor will it end, such as paradise and hellfire, the throne, and other than that. No one else claims the end of all creation other than the people of Kalam, the innovators, like Jahm ibn Safwan and those who agree from the Mu'tazila and like them. And this is an invalid statement that goes against the Book of Allah, the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the consensus of the Salaf of this Ummah and its Imams.
And that's the end of that section. Now, I did discuss this theme with a friend of mine who is a big fan of Ibn Taymiyyah, and it appears to be the case that modern followers in today's world of Ibn Taymiyyah actually disagree with Ibn Taymiyyah on this point. They think he was wrong, actually. It's not as if Salafis, for example, follow Ibn Taymiyyah slavishly on what he said and believed on everything. They don't. So there seems to be a pretty universal consensus amongst the majority Sunni theologians throughout history and modern followers and supporters of Ibn Taymiyyah that he was just wrong on this. Wrong in the sense that Islam, the Quran, the Sunnah, the Hadith require universal salvation.
While it's true that Salafis don't follow Ibn Taymiyyah on every issue, I couldn't find a single scholar based on text and evidences claiming that Ibn Taymiyyah believed that the hellfire would end. So I'd like to remind myself and all my brothers about the statement of Allah, وَلَا تَقَفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. And don't follow that which you have no knowledge of. Certainly the hearing, the sight, and the heart of each of you will be questioned. And also the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in Sahih Muslim, where he says, كَفَى بِالْمَرْءِ كَذِبًا أَنْ يُحَدِّثَ بِكُلِّ مَا سَمِعَ. That enough lying for a man is that he narrates everything that he hears. So we should confirm that the texts attributed to a scholar or another Muslim is true. Take the text, look through the text, and don't believe these Western academic scholars, because from what I can tell, their research is subpar, to say the least. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.